Okay, so before we get started, I should kind of explain what I've done here. I decided that I was going to do this response video about 2 months ago now, 3 months ago, and it turned out much longer than I thought it would. Mainly because Justin Dennis is such an incredible and monumental imbecile that I had to stop almost every sentence to point out how deceitful, hateful, or idiotic what he was saying was. To the point that this came out to something like an hour and a half in terms of just the dialogue from me. Needless to say, this was a bit daunting to get everything recorded and done up nicely with my full work schedule, and some of the time I've been ill, etc., 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 real life shit. But the short version of this is that this is why I haven't really done any response videos lately. I don't want to move on to the others in the queue until I deal with this one, but this one is also very weighty, plus I'm not sure that anyone really wants to sit and listen to me talk for that long, and I certainly wouldn't blame anyone. So what I've decided to do is to split this up into sections, which is easy since Justin's video is in sections itself, and just do them as I get the chance. This is the first one and the longest one, I promise. The others will be shorter bites. But I'll be doing my other response videos and such as well in the interim, and I'll just do these as I'm able. A lot of people have torn this shit to threads anyways, but hopefully I've added something to the conversation with these. Well, I know I at least have with this first bit, but anyways. This is how it's going to work for this shit. Okay? Explanation over. I now return you to the video in question. Hi kids, Alzael here today. We have something very special for you. Today, Auntie Justin is going to teach you how to build a massive, proper Mott and Bailey. Let's listen, shall we?
I can't believe it's
What the fuck is with your appearance? What, did Ziggy Stardust and Iggy Pop have a bastard child? I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and guess that somebody desperately wants attention.
I can't believe it's 2016 and we still have to talk about this.
I know. You'd think you fuckers would have found a new horse to beat to death by now. But here you are. And I've already swallowed the bottle of Valium, so let's grab our sticks and engage in a little necromantic equine tenderization, shall we?
Look, feminism isn't about hating men. It simply isn't.
Oh, well. Now that you've said feminism isn't about hating men, I totally believe you and can't believe I didn't realize it sooner. By the way, did you know that the Ku Klux Klan says they don't hate blacks and the Westboro Baptist Church says they don't hate gays? I don't know why I brought that up, really. Just seemed relevant somehow. On a side note, that's a nice Bailey you've constructed there, Justine. The trees are green, the castle walls are high, and there are no barbarian hordes in sight to attack us with their vicious arguments.
By saying that it is, you're misrepresenting feminism and not allowing for rational discourse to take place. This is a logical fallacy called a straw man.
Cool. How are they misrepresenting feminism? Out of all of the many hundreds of pieces of evidence they provide, and all of the arguments that they make, complete with logical justification, how exactly are they misrepresenting feminism? I assume that now you're going to allow us to reference some of these arguments people have made, or link to some of their videos, blogs, or the articles that you're going to argue against. Much as I'm doing now, showing your actual arguments in words, and then responding to them so that everyone can see what I'm arguing against, and can make up their own minds with full knowledge and information. Instead of making blanket and vague claims that tell your audience nothing about what the other side has actually said, and pretending as though they've made no specific claims or provided evidence to support themselves. Right, Justin? Justin? Justin!
When you say that feminists hate men, you make yourself sound reasonable because you don't hate men. But here's the thing, neither do I, and neither do most feminists.
You're just saying that to make yourself sound reasonable.
Ah, but you see how I said most?
I did.
That must be proof that some feminists hate men, right? Well, yeah, sure, probably, somewhere.
Some? Buttercup, am I gonna have to drag out the list? Because I will. I will drag out the list of feminist leaders and major feminist thinkers who are open man-haters and their quotes. And keep in mind that we are talking about the mainstream feminist authors and activists. I will drag out that list and you will scream and you will melt into a puddle of protoplasmic goo mixed with cheap eyeliner and latent daddy issues. so don't tempt me, bitch.
You see, feminism isn't an organization. 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 We don't have meetings. We don't have meetings. We don't have meetings. We don't have meetings. We don't have leaders. We don't have leaders. We don't have leaders. We don't have leaders. We don't have rules for membership. We don't have rules for membership. We don't have rules for membership. We don't have rules for membership.
And don't think I didn't notice that little word trick of yours. Yes, feminism is not an organization. It's an ideology. It has organizations. Many, many, many organizations. With millions, probably billions of dollars altogether that are used to advance and promote the ideology. Could you at least wait until the 1 minute mark before you start lying out of your ass?
If someone wants to call themselves a feminist while doing things that I would 100% consider not feminist, they're well within their rights to do so. But
So, just to be clear, feminism does not hate men. But if feminists do hate men, that's perfectly okay with us. You know, the people crusading for equality, who on the whole do not hate men. Seems kind of counterproductive to me.
feminism as a whole doesn't hate men.
And that, kids, is how you do a Mott and Bailey right. And it only took, about 50 seconds or so. Impressive. To those who don't know what I'm describing, a Mott and Bailey doctrine is a rhetorical practice where one protects a desirable, but usually poorly defensible position by swapping it with a more defensible, but generally trivial position, usually one that's vague and ambiguous. For instance, he starts this out by saying definitively that feminism is not about hating men, because, as he's about to tell us, feminism is by definition about equality. We'll call that Proposition A. Then he proceeds to say feminism has no codes, nor organizations, and no rules, and anyone can be a feminist. We'll call this Proposition B. So we have Proposition A, which states that there are certain rules and objective criteria of feminism, so feminism cannot be about man-hating. And then we have Proposition B, which states that there are no criteria for being a feminist, and a feminist can indeed be a man-hating bigot. And will be used to argue that any feminists that do obviously hate men, i.e. most of them, cannot be used to reflect the whole, and he does this very fast in the manner of a gish gallop, so that someone who isn't paying it as close attention won't notice. Then, when you argue based on Proposition A, he'll claim that you're strawmanning him because of Proposition B, and when you argue based on Proposition B, he'll claim that you're strawmanning him because of Proposition A. This is how dishonest scumbags like to push nonsense. In this case, he started with the position that he really wanted to prove, that feminism is not about man-hating men. But you'll note that he never actually defended that position. He just kinda slid along backwards until he got to feminism has no rules, organizations, and anyone can use it however they want, so you can't say that feminism is about man-hating. In other words, he's now claiming that feminism is so vague and undefined that you can't apply such labels and terms to it. This is the Mott. It's a position that is so easy for him to defend, because if you accept it, then it renders feminism to be completely vaporous and generalized. Of course, it also renders feminism itself virtually useless, since if feminism really has no rules and anyone can just call themselves a feminist, then the term imparts no useful information, and is effectively meaningless. Which is why you'll note that he will peek his head out of the Mott every so often to occupy the Bailey again, and make his objective and poorly defensible claims. Let's watch what Justin says in about 10 seconds, shall we?
By its very definition, seeking equality and justice on the basis of gender, sexuality, and race, feminism isn't about hating men. But we don't have rules for membership? If someone wants to call himself a feminist while doing things that I would 100% consider not feminist, they're well within their rights to do so. But by its very definition, seeking equality and justice on the basis of gender, sexuality, and race, feminism isn't about hating men. But we don't have rules for membership?
And that, my lovely bitches, is a Mott and Bailey. Get used to it, cause he'll be doing this a lot. This is why I always make it a point to split these videos up into so many parts. You really need to take a gish gallop apart piece by piece to properly analyze it. Because that's exactly what people like him, her, whatever don't want you doing. Actually paying attention to what they're saying. The priests never want the laymen in their flock to actually study the holy text. So, just to recap the last 40 seconds, feminism is definitely not about hating men, except for the feminists that do hate men. People misinterpret and misrepresent feminism, even though it has no representative organization, tenets, or doctrine to interpret. There are no set objective criteria for being a feminist, and anyone can be a feminist even if they hate men. Thus, feminism is objectively not about hating men, because feminism is equality by definition, with no criteria or rules for being a feminist, except, the ones I just said there are, so you can support equality based on gender and race, even if you hate one whole gender and race. To every human being watching this video, I dare you to make less sense. Tiffany, maybe the reason it seems that people misrepresent your argument is because they're unaware of what your argument is supposed to be that particular millisecond.
Maybe you get confused when we talk about things that relate to being a man.
Oh no, everything you've said so far is perfectly clear and rational, assuming one has the memory span of a goldfish. What you haven't said, though, is why we should think that feminists don't hate men. Beyond your assurance that feminists don't hate men. And let's be honest here, Buffy. Between the two of us, which one of us is actually confused about being a man? But, okay. I'm still waiting for your actual argument on why feminists don't hate men.
There are a few concepts that we regularly critique and argue against.
I'm sorry, allow me to translate that into English for a minute, since most of you probably don't speak feminist English. There are a lot of things that feminists claim and whine about in regards to men based on blatant lies, poorly obtained data, and ideological legerdemain that could only rationally be thought of by someone who hated men. Here's 6 of them.
And it's possible that some of those could be misconstrued as being against men. So today I want to break down a few of those concepts.
So, then, just to be clear here, you're not actually going to argue against the fact that feminists hate men. The topic of your video? This is actually just a thinly disguised propaganda piece, so you can reinforce your audience's feminist beliefs by reminding them of all the important buzzwords like sexism and toxic masculinity and privilege. That whole preamble was just a superficial pretense. At this point, I'm not even angry. Denise, all you're going to do is repeat the exact same man-hating BS that you always say. Then I'm going to provide all of the arguments for why it's man-hating. Then you will proceed to pretend I didn't and claim that people are misrepresenting your argument. And by misrepresenting, you will mean directly addressing them. Okay, let's do this shit.
First up is toxic masculinity, which is a phrase that refers to all of the negative aspects of our culture's definition of masculinity.
Give me your definition. Not our society. This is how you define masculinity. What do you call the positive ones, Justin? We'll get to that in a minute.
So basically, when you're raised as a man in our society, you're raised with certain ideas about what it means to be a man, and some of those are very harmful.
Again, Twinkerbell. Maybe what it means to be a man is kind of not quite in your wheelhouse. Case in point.
Toxic masculinity asserts that for men to be considered men, they have to be violent, aggressive, dominant, angry, and never cry or show emotions. To be violent, aggressive, dominant, angry, and never cry or show emotions. And never cry or show emotions. To be violent, aggressive, dominant, angry, and...
Dumb! Tell me something, Justin, Justina, Justine, whatever the fuck you think you are. Where in society are men taught that? Who teaches them that? Where in society are men praised for being violent, domineering, etc.? Where are violent, domineering, and angry men held up as role models for young boys? Can you name me even one example of a person like that where society goes, yeah, be like him someday? And no, having them as protagonists is not the same as telling people to be like them. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, if I got violent with another kid, I got in trouble for it. I don't recall a single instance where I hit another kid and got a pat on the back and a candy bar for my troubles, which you would think would be the logical reaction of my parents and teachers, if I was being encouraged to be violent. See, what you're trying to say here is not just incredibly stupid. I mean, it is incredibly stupid, but it's not just incredibly stupid. It is a complete abdication of reality. Like, your reality is one way, and you are literally saying that it is, no, reality is this entirely different thing. Men disproportionately receive much longer and stiffer punishments if they commit acts of violence than women do, both in terms of the legal system and just in society in general. And that's assuming that women are even punished at all. Female rapists and sexual abusers aren't even recognized in many jurisdictions, even when they abuse children. How many women have we seen in news and media who beat or kill their children and face no punishment? Just out of curiosity, if a guy walks up and punches someone in the face, and a woman comes up and punches someone in the face, who do you think is going to be facing the more harsher consequences? Especially if the man punched a woman. But what would happen if the woman punches a man? You're actually trying to tell us that the group that receives the harsher punishments is the one being encouraged to do the thing. The only time I was ever taught that violence was okay was when it was in defense of myself or someone else. I never got praised for smacking my younger siblings around because I was establishing my masculine dominance as the eldest child. I never received a cookie for fighting with girls or pulling hair in kindergarten. I got put in the corner for a timeout. Then there's TV. What TV shows do you think are encouraging men to be violent? Because violence is usually negatively portrayed in kids' TV shows, or TV shows in general. The only time the good guys are allowed to be violent is when they're fighting the bad guys. Fighting to protect other people from evil. Aside from that, the message, if any, seems to be violence only as a necessary response. Pure violence, or violence not done in defense, is generally the realm of the anti-hero, who are generally portrayed to be only a step or two below the villain on the moral scale. In media, men, at least the ones that are meant to be admirable, are the ones that fight to protect their loved one, or for the affection of a woman, or their country, or they fight for principles, self-respect. Rocky didn't step into that ring with Mr. T just because he wanted to knock a nigger out. The bad guys do that sort of thing. Superman, Spider-Man, Batman do not go out fighting supervillains because they're pissed off and want to fight. Okay, there might be some of that with Batman, but he's kind of an acknowledged psychopath. They do it to protect, and they do it on principle. Truth, justice, and the American way. With great power comes great responsibility, etc. Sure, you also have characters like the Punisher, but nobody, even in their own comic book universe, looks at the Punisher as a role model for boys or men. He is consistently portrayed as a barely functioning psychopath who just happens to be pointed at the direction of people worse than him. And, this is the most common one, men are taught to be violent and to fight to protect women. There are centuries upon centuries of literature, codes of conduct, rules and laws, stating that a man should be prepared to fight for and lay down his life to protect a woman. Any woman. Gentlemanly codes of conduct, before that chivalry, before that the noble habitus, all telling men that a man should be kind, generous, respectful towards women, protect his lord, protect his country, protect his family, protect the innocent, fight evil. See, you're trying to say that being taught to fight, or being taught, to be stoic and all that, is some horrible, horrible thing, but you're removing any and all context from these things, and you're portraying it only as a negative. You're taking away the reasons and the applications and turning it into something entirely different than what it actually is. Find for me the heroic man, the single character that the audience is supposed to admire, that is supposed to be a great role model to aspire to. Find me a single person or character that is like you describe. Now find me how many villains or evil characters are like how you describe. Note which of the two groups you are using to describe masculine characteristics. But, okay, let's take a look at a site about teaching men to be men. A site called The Art of Manliness. Say it with me, Justin. The Art of Manliness. That little twinge you just felt right now, that was testosterone. You might want to try it sometime. But anyways, on The Art of Manliness, you'll note that they teach and encourage things in men like personal accountability, to be morally strong and righteous, strengthening character, and how to be a good worker and provider. According to them, the 3 cores of masculinity are protect, procreate, and provide. Ask Men lists some of its manly traits as keeping the house in order, caring for his hygiene, working and making his own fortune, being a role model, honesty and keeping his word, minding his own business, and focus and discipline. On Ranker, women were asked to rank the most important qualities that they desired in a man. The first 5 were trustworthy, loyal, loving, honest, and responsible. Chad House writes an article on the 20 qualities of being the ultimate man, and he mentions, among other things, a man treats women with respect. If you don't respect women, you're not a man, period. A man understands that greater happiness lies in helping others, not himself. A man is a leader in at least one aspect of his life, whether this means his family, with his friends, or just in general, but he can also follow. The world wouldn't work if everyone was trying to lead in every aspect of life. You can depend on a man, you can't depend on a boy. A man doesn't need to be able to fight or to protect himself and his family physically, but it helps. He does, however, need to be willing to do whatever it takes to keep his family safe and happy. A man lives for something, a purpose beyond his own personal gains. This can come with time and with family. It doesn't always happen right away. I invite you to look at other articles which will be in the low bar. Elite Daily's 20 Characteristics of a Real Man, John Kim's 4 Qualities of a Real Man, the Acquiring Man's article on real men. Hell, even that ridiculous cesspool that is the Urban Dictionary has a take on what is a real man, and it is thus: a real man has manners, is polite and considerate. He is honest and open and true to himself. He will fight for and defend the people that he loves. He is a hard worker. He is not spiteful. He respects women and shows appreciation for all of his blessings. A real man is the provider of the family. He is strong physically and mentally, and is never too proud to exhibit strong emotion. Once committed, he is faithful to only her. He does not watch porn or disrespect her in any other way. He helps with housework and is a role model for his children. A real man knows who he is, what he wants, and is grateful for what he has. And this is the Urban Dictionary. The fucking Urban Dictionary. Even the twisted, wretched bunghole of the internet understands masculinity better than you do, and has a more favorable opinion of it. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should actually directly ask some people in society what they think manhood is.
Hey, we're out here in Birkdale Village trying to find the answer to one question. One question. What does it mean to be a man?
Wow. What does it mean to be a man? I don't know.
Have a lot of confidence.
You go first.
To be able to go against the grain and not care what other people think.
Being able to
To be a great dad. To be a man.
To take care of your responsibilities.
One word, honesty.
Work your butt off until you're old enough to retire like we did.
Strength coupled with virtue, bravery combined with character. In times of a crisis, a man must be able to fight and prevail. In times of peace, he must be able to care for his family, cultivate his mind, and serve his community and state civically. At all times, he must stand ready to serve whatever capacity he is needed. This, to me, is the ideal. Circumscribing hard virtues and soft virtues into one whole. This is the complete man. He's a loving husband and father, loyal friend and brother, and yet would also not just be able to survive, but to completely lead in a disaster. And he could be called up by the military tomorrow to serve without breaking a sweat in boot camp. He's good at being a man, and he's a good man too.
I would say take care of your family and friends.
What does it mean to be a man? Any ideas? Just a clue.
For yourself and take responsibility and just, I don't know, to contribute to society.
To be a provider and
A man can walk proudly down in the street. A man's not ashamed of what he believes. He knows how to laugh, he knows when to cry, he knows how to live. He's not afraid to die.
instills security and respect in your family?
I think it's being a good supporter of your family and your wife, and I think it's being the godly head of your household.
Protector, lover.
I like that lover part. Did you get that in there?
When all of a sudden no one's taking care of you, you got yourself, and after that, you've got others.
I don't think.
And it's no longer about you, I guess. And that's, I guess, when you're a man, when you can realize that life's not about you anymore.
As he once told a group of young men, "When I speak of the American boy, what I say really applies to the grown-ups nearly as much to the boys. I want to see you game, boys. I want to see you brave and manly, and I also want to see you gentle and tender. In other words, you should make it your object to be the right kind of boys at home so that your family will feel a genuine regret instead of a sense of relief when you stay away. And at the same time, you must be able to hold your own in the outside world. You cannot do that if you have not manliness or courage in you. It does no good to have either of those two sets of qualities if you lack the other. I do not care how nice a little boy you are, how pleasant at home, if when you are out, you are afraid of other little boys lest they be rude to you. For if so, you will not be a very happy boy, nor grow up a very useful man. When a boy grows up, I want him to be such a type that when somebody wrongs him, he will feel a good, healthy desire to show the wrongdoer that he cannot be wronged with impunity. I like to have the man who is a citizen feel when a wrong is done in the community by anyone, when there is exhibition of corruption or betrayal of trust or demagoguery or violence or brutality, not that he is shocked and horrified and would like to go home, but I want to have him feel the determination to put the wrongdoer down, to make the man who does wrong aware that the decent man is not only his superior in decency, but is his superior in strength. In other words, Theodore Roosevelt believed that honor was found not only in living a life of virtue, but in being brave and strong enough to defend that virtue if needed. That was the kind of man he respected.
I have looked at article after article, magazine after magazine, websites, books, etc., and I cannot find anything that portrays men and masculinity as you are saying that they are taught to be. Well, nothing that is, except for stuff done by feminists, or feminist-leaning individuals. It is only feminists who look at the qualities that are the exact opposite of manhood, the qualities that men are taught by society to never embrace, and say that those qualities are the societal norm for men. And, strangely enough, it amazes you that people think you hate men. I know, fucking mind-boggling, isn't it? Tell me, Clarice, tell me the truth. You can level with me here. We're all friends. Somewhere in your country, there is a little village desperately seeking their idiot, isn't there? Go back to them, Gertrude. Your family misses you. It's confusing to me, Justin, how the group that definitely does not hate men is the only group that maintains that all men are taught to be violent, killing rape machines. Like, out of all of the groups in society, out of all the millions of people in society, it's just you. How the group that does not hate men devotes a large portion of its time to, as you just said, sitting around and discussing how violent men are, to pushing this message in society, despite the mountain of evidence to the contrary, to defending this idea when people call you out on this falsehood that you claim is true. It confuses me, Justin, how this can possibly be one of the main talking points of a group that absolutely does not hate men. But who knows? Maybe you'll explain this better to me when you do your video explaining how feminism isn't about hating men. Oh wait, that was supposed to be this video. My bad. Which brings me to the question of what I asked you before, Denise. What do you call the positive traits of masculinity? You don't call them anything, do you? Because you never mention them. Any talk of all of those virtues of masculinity that I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about, none of those virtues of masculinity are ever talked about by feminists, or praised by feminists, even though you rely on all those virtues when you cry out he or she. You expect men to display those virtues at all times, so why would feminists only focus on calling out and criticizing the negative qualities of a group of people, assuming you're even right about those qualities of masculinity in the first place, while ignoring all the positive and beneficial aspects of that group's identity? And it's not just here in this little section. You are about to go on and on at some length about how men are privileged, men are sexist, men hurt women, men are violent, men are dominating, etc., etc., etc. What you're not going to say at any point in this is exactly what no feminist ever said. That men are human. You will only ever at any point portray men and masculinity as being harmful. You won't mention all the men who died in wars and battle protecting their wives and daughters because that's due to patriarchal blah-de-blah. Not the men who go to early graves working hard jobs that the families can be provided for, because that's a patriarchally opposed gender role. Not men sacrificing and fighting for their loved ones, because men would never do that if society didn't force them to. Everything that men do will always come back to toxic masculinity, won't it? But of course, you don't hate men, right, Justin? What about toxic femininity? What are the bad traits that women are taught to possess? Surely society must be teaching women toxic behaviors. So why don't you talk about those, or mention those at all? Because they don't exist in your fucking framework, you horse-faced little Nancy boy. But despite that fact, you don't actually hate men. Fucking feminist.
Toxic masculinity assumes all men to be potential rapists.
You mean feminists say that? Again, it was you feminists who created the concept of toxic masculinity. That's your paradigm. Other people don't believe in toxic masculinity. You do. So what you're saying is that feminists think all men are taught to be violent. Schrodinger's rapists teach men not to rape, etc. That's not society that says that. It's you who says that. You're the ones who tell society that men need to be taught not to rape. Not women, of course, even though women do their fair half of the raping. But only men are rapists in waiting. All men. Just as only men are violent, only men molest children, only men are sexually predatory. Pick a bad thing, and it is only men who do it in your world. Or only men who do it primarily, despite the fact that nearly all of that is verifiably and provably untrue, but you refuse to ever drop the narrative that it is men alone who are the violent, bad, dangerous ones. But you don't hate men. Answer me something, Janice. How is what you just said any different than the things that the Nazis used to say about the Jews? Or the Ku Klux Klan used to say about the blacks? Because I'm sure that you have a really good explanation for that. It's okay. I'll wait. As I said, Justin, a guyliner-encrusted ladyboy might not have the best insights on male behavior and thinking patterns. On the plus side, I bet you'd be a hit in Thailand.
By saying that a woman who was dressed a certain way was asking for it, as if men can't resist the temptation to rape someone when they see a little bit of skin.
Can you point me to a single non-feminist man who actually voices that opinion? Are you going to give me any, even a single citation for anything that you're... Yeah, I know, of course you won't. I'm wasting my time even asking. See, you think you're describing what men are taught to be in society, but society, as I've showed previously, does not think that men are taught to be like that. It is you that are trying to convince society that men are like this, because you hate men. That is why you are trying to convince society that all men are potential rapists. It is only you who thinks this. Only you. And you have not one iota of proof to provide to show that you are correct.
Also assumes all men to be straight. You've probably heard someone say that they became a man after they first had sex with a woman. And not wanting to have sex with women means people will probably say you're not really a man.
Probably. You have probably heard this said. You are taking something that may or may not be said by an unspecified number of people and using that to make a universal claim about society's attitudes and behavior. Never mind that you're not even reading it right. You realize that when a woman has sex, they say that she became a woman, right? It's not about manhood. It's about adulthood. Sex is considered a graduation from being a child to being considered an adult, for both genders. You have had sex before, right, Trina? I mean, with an actual person in real life? Or at least a reasonably intelligent circus animal? But you do at least understand the process, correct?
This is bad for everyone. It's bad for women and other gender minorities who are often the victims of toxic masculinity-fueled violence, and it's bad for rape survivors who are blamed for what happened to them. And it's harmful to men because it limits who they are allowed to be.
I'm sorry, all I heard was bad for non sequitur, who non sequitur, and non sequitur that get non sequitur. You realize you just jumped from 3 different trains of thought and didn't even bother to connect the tracks? Because people assume that men might want to fuck chicks, as the vast majority of men are wont to do, and causes women to experience toxic masculinity-fueled violence, which apparently does not affect men despite them being the ones far most likely to experience violence, and somehow causes rape as well. But the fact that we assume all men are walking harbingers of rage and violence has no deleterious effects at all, somehow. Look, I hate to interrupt your gish galloping here, Mirabelle. And believe me, it's a lovely little gish gallop you're doing here. But do you think you might at least expend a second or two to actually explain the A to B of your claims? As a personal favor, if I'm going to mock you for being an idiot, and I will, I would at least like to know the exact construction method of the stupid idea. It makes for more efficient mockery. Incidentally, I couldn't help but notice that you trotted out the women and other gender minorities line. Karen, you realize that women are not a minority, right? There are more women than men. They are in fact the majority. So the gender minority is men, and by the way, since there are only 2 genders, when you say women and other gender minorities, you really just mean everyone. And if you're going to try and justify your BS by saying that gender is a social construct, well, society and our social systems only recognize 2 genders, so fuck you, I win.
We know that there are men who don't want to be violent and aggressive, but lash out because it's the manly thing to do.
Citation, motherfucker. Do you speak it?
We know that men should be able to cry and show their emotions.
And they can. You have not presented any argument or evidence otherwise. It's feminist to shame men when they say that they're vulnerable. Ask any of those pesky little MRAs who run around trying to draw attention to men's issues exactly what feminists say to them every time they bring up a problem that men have and point out when men are vulnerable. Go ahead, ask them.
We know that men can be gay or bisexual or pansexual.
Who said they couldn't? Again, this is just feminist.
By identifying toxic masculinity as the problem that it is,
you mean the problem that you say it is. You haven't actually demonstrated this. Like, at all. In fact, you've been provably wrong on most counts so far.
We hope to open up even more avenues for men to be masculine in non-toxic ways.
As long as they're the ways that we want them to. Because any display of masculinity that we deem toxic is wrong. Which is all of them, apparently. All men are taught to be masculine in toxic ways by society. That's what you have said, and you have said it repeatedly. All men are born into this world sick, and only through you can they become well. You horrid little piece of shit. I mean, if I said that all women are taught to be manipulative gold-digging whores, or all Jews were taught to be greedy, or all blacks were taught to be thieves, that wouldn't be hateful at all, would it? Do you really think that trying to weasel out of this by saying society makes it any different? And what really disgusts and creeps people out about you is how happy you sound while you say these things. You flat out just stated that you think all men are rapists in training, and you did it with a smile and a cheerful grin.